like to talk to you about giving writing feedback in your class. Let's say you collected 10 paragraphs from your students and you think to yourself, how am I going to approach giving my students feedback on this writing? Research about the effectiveness of giving feedback is controversial, but I can show you some general practices in this video today. We're going to talk about two main types of writing feedback. Feedback on content, which would be things like ideas and organization, and feedback on form, which would be things like grammar, spelling, punctuation, and capitalization. There might be times when you only want to give feedback on content. This would be something like maybe some creative writing or journal writing assignments. There may also be times where you only want to give feedback on form. Maybe you want your students to write individual sentences to practice some grammar, or they're writing a recipe and you're just looking at their form. There are also times where you want to look at both content and form in the same writing assignment. Different things like essays and paragraphs and writing letters. There are many different types of assignments where you would look at both content and form. So let's look more closely at giving feedback on content and form in student writing. We give feedback on content in a few different ways. You can give comments throughout the text in order to really focus in on the areas where students need to make improvements or where you think they're doing things particularly well. We also see comments at the very end of the text. Sometimes it's a short paragraph, or sometimes instructors choose to add comments to a rubric that they're using. This is a great way to give students an idea of how they're doing overall on their ideas and organization. Some instructors choose to use more of a Socratic or questioning technique where they ask questions in the text in order to guide students into making improvements. This may not work well with lower level learners because it's not direct enough and they may not understand what you're getting at with the questions. With many English language learners, a more direct technique works better with comments throughout the text. You can give them a comment to tell them exactly what they need to work on. Just like with feedback on content, instructors approach feedback on form in different ways. Especially with lower level learners, some instructors choose to give direct correction on errors with form. Some instructors choose a more indirect approach. This might include things like underlining errors, using correction symbols, indicating the number of errors in a line of a text, or pointing out the number and type of errors at the end of a text. Here's an example of correction symbols used within a text in order to show the types of errors that a student is making. If you choose to use correction symbols with your class, you need to make them available to your students and you need to show them exactly how you use them. And last, some instructors choose not to make correction on form. They think that students might not be ready for some of the correction, and also research is controversial in this area. Some researchers say that correction on form isn't effective. Now that we've looked more closely at giving feedback on content and form in writing, I want to leave you with a couple of considerations. Think about feedback in the process approach to writing. Many times we give feedback on ideas and organization before we give feedback on form. So you might give content feedback in the first draft and wait until the second or third draft to give feedback on things like grammar or spelling. I'd also like you to think about cultural considerations. There are some cultures where students always expect feedback on form, so you may have to have a conversation with them to let them know why you choose not to give feedback on form in a certain assignment. Whatever you choose to do concerning writing feedback will depend on the type of assignment you give, the time constraints you have for giving feedback, and the expectations of your students and the program where you work.